Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson. If this is your first time here, we want to welcome you. If you're an organizational leader or manager in church-based ministry, in business, in academia, then you're definitely in the right place. In addition to hosting the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast, I also offer one-to-one and group coaching for leaders and leadership teams that want to improve their effectiveness and become more productive and increase their performance. Inspirational, entertaining, and engaging keynote talks that will help shift the mindset of your leaders and bring about the organizational culture that you really desire. For more information or to book a free, no-obligation consultation to see whether we're the right fit for each other, simply drop me an email today at errol@errollawson.com, and I'd love to have a chat with you. Thank you for listening. Enjoy today's show. Welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast again today with myself, Errol Lawson, and my very special guest today is William R. Patterson. Also known as the Barron Wealth Coach, William Patterson is the CEO of the Barron Solution Group, a top 100 minority business enterprise. He's also a senior field chairman with First Financial Security Incorporated, and he was named Entrepreneur of the Year by African American Lifestyle magazine and a top 20 business icon by Exceptional People magazine. Is ranked as one of the top business motivational speakers in the US by ranking.com. William, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Errol, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. William, before, I know there's a lot more I could say about you from your bio is pretty extensive, but give us, fill in any gaps in your bio first of all, and give us a glimpse into what you're up to in the world right now.
Sure. Well, I started out in the technical world as an electrical engineer and later moved on to Wall Street, where I worked for a short period of time before I started my own company. And I have my hands in a lot of different businesses, both as a consultant and owning and operating those different businesses, as well as an investor. Mm-hmm. So it's been an amazing ride where I've had a chance to learn a lot about leadership, management, what works, what doesn't work, how to inspire people. And I look for those opportunities to also be inspired and to look for those new opportunities where I can make a difference.
Awesome. And the Barron Wealth Coach, where did that name come from? What's that about?
Sure. Well, the Barron Solution Group, our whole company, is based on our best-selling book, which is The Barron Son, which was the story of three students who sought out the richest man in the world to learn his secrets of prosperity. And it was designed, the Barron Son was designed as the ethical guide to wealth, power, and success. And it showed a person how they could change the condition of their life when they had absolutely nothing, no money, no resources, and no idea of where to start.
Wow. And that book is called?
The Barron Son, Barron Son.
All right. Love it. So where did this all start for you? Like, what were you doing beforehand, and how did you transition into what you're doing right now?
Well, it's an interesting journey. I started out, and I have to really take it back because my father was a great influence in my life. And growing up, he taught me a lot about computers. And because of that background, I wanted to move into the world of computers and eventually become the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. And even before that, I was a big basketball fan. And, this was the days of Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson, Larry Bird in the U.S. And I was really excited, and people used to always tell me, you're more likely to get struck by lightning than you are to become the CEO of a Fortune 100 company. And so in high school, I ended up breaking my hand and lost my college scholarship. And then I said, okay, when I decide that I can't play in the NBA, maybe one day I can own this Fortune 100 company. And, people would say, you're more likely to, make it into the NBA than you are to become the CEO of a Fortune 100 company, particularly as an African-American male at that time in the U.S. And it was an amazing time and transformation for me because I started to focus more on business and the bottom line and understanding how to move up through management and move from doing project management to doing functional management where you learn how to manage teams. Mm-hmm. And then I had a mentor, and at that time it was Chris Williams, who now runs the Williams Capital Group, which is probably number one and number two investment bank on Wall Street. He had just left Lehman Brothers, and I was working for another investment bank on Wall Street, and he was trying to convince me more or less to go out and do my own thing. And it was his kind of prompting me to believe in myself and to go for my dream that really caused me to step out there and, experience some of the ups and downs. But, ultimately, it's been an incredible journey and was definitely worth the risk of going out and pursuing my own dream.
Mm-hmm. So how did you understand that this is what you're called to do? Was there a sense of, God spoke to you, or there was someone that spoke it over you, or how did you know this is what you meant to do and not something else?
Well, I've always had that passion or that connection. I've always wanted to, be able to help people. I always wanted to have a certain control of circumstances to the degree that I could, and so I knew I wanted to direct enterprise in terms of being, the CEO of a business. And, I was just very fortunate, through grace to have these different opportunities present themselves. And along the lines of books like Think and Grow Rich, where if you focus on something, all the things that you need, you'll find are attracted to you to be able to make those happen. And, again, just, through grace and opportunity, a lot of those different pieces aligned for me to be able to do the work.
And was there like a significant turning point on your journey? Or maybe you were heading in one direction on your journey, and maybe there's like an epiphany, a revelation that caused you to go in a completely different direction altogether. Can you tell us that story?
Well, I think, I'm sure we'll probably explore this a little more in the interview, but I would say, there were a couple of turning points. One was moving from athletics to business, and actually, I think there was a big turning point, and actually it was as a child. And I do tell this story a few times where I wanted a pair of shoes as a kid. It was a pair of Nikes that had a pump on them. And, I asked my father, or at least I was telling my father about, getting this pair of shoes. And he says, "Come here, I want to show you something." So he pulled up a stock chart for Nike, and he also pointed to a beat up pair of shoes that I had in the corner. And he says, "Tell me, how much do you think those pair of shoes are worth?" And I said, "Probably next to nothing." Then we looked at the stock chart for Nike, and it had nearly doubled over a couple of years. And at that point, I realized that with every dollar, I was choosing to be rich or poor. Wow. And I also understood that I could begin to build wealth by moving from being a consumer to being an investor and investing in the companies that were making the products and the services that my friends and I were buying. And then I could build greater wealth by actually becoming the companies that was producing the products that the investors wanted to invest in, and that were making the products and the services that people were buying. So that was a big turning point there. And then there was another turning point where I moved into kind of the nonprofit or the NGO world, and also I started to do more in terms of philanthropy and board development. And a lot of people don't think about that when it comes to their development, being able to or think about getting involved with different nonprofit or NGO organizations. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity and good that you're able to do, and just life transformation that comes from that kind of work.
It's great, man. So your father was a clear, important role model in your life for you.
Oh, definitely. I would say, he is, and to this day, the biggest role model in my life. And I was just very fortunate, particularly in the U.S., where you have a lot of young Black males who don't have father figures in their lives. I was very fortunate to be able to have one who was an outstanding father, who really did mentor me in a lot of very powerful ways in terms of business development, in terms of thinking about finance, in terms of being able to solve problems, and not just in the things that he taught me, but in the actual example that he set as a man. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember a day in my life or my childhood where my father was sick, like in terms of he stayed home and didn't, he wasn't doing something, and not like he was a laborer where, he was going to a plant or something every day, not that there's anything wrong with that, but he was always planning, he was strategizing, he was building. And those were things that I gained a greater appreciation for over the years as I looked at my work ethic and I saw my work ethic mirror his.
That's great. That's great. Up to now, what's been your biggest challenge in leadership to this point in your journey?
I would say building great teams. It's always a challenge to find those right people that create this amazing synergy. And one of my other mentors, who's Dr. George Frazier, he's been called America's number one networker. He really taught me about this concept of click, what makes people click. And it's when people do have the chemistry, they have the fit and the timing. So being able to build relationships with people, understanding how these relationships can drive just about any and everything that you want to do. But one of the other things that he taught me was about, building teams. And it's almost as though you're this maestro.
So what makes that so difficult then? Why do people find it so hard to build great teams?
Well, it's because it's, again, like a symphony. Kind of where I was going with that is you have to find, in order to make this beautiful piece, you have to find the right person who can play that note, who can play that position, who can fill that gap. And one of the other things that's happening is that you do have these emerging trends that are happening. And, we'll explore that a little later too, but it's this concept of a wealth reset and another concept called the half-life of knowledge. And what the half-life of knowledge means is that within industries, the half-life of knowledge is the amount of time where it takes for half the knowledge in that particular field to become irrelevant. And 10 years ago, 10 years, well, I say, a while ago, it used to take 10 years for half the knowledge in an industry to be irrelevant. But there's some industries now where that the half-life of knowledge is now 18 months. So to be able to have teams where there's a learning culture, where people are innovative and are not only looking for or waiting for direction, but are setting the trend, and they are being able to come up with new and innovative ideas and repackage old ideas for new markets. So to be able to find, the right teams that put all of that together, it can definitely be a challenge.
So let me ask you a question then. So you've got an idea for a project, and you want to put a team together. Where do you start? What's your process now?
Sure. Well, one of the things I want to do is to scope it out. And I am, fortunate now, like over the years, really 20 years of being in the business, I have gotten to the point where I have been able to put together some great teams and coming out of a consulting background, but definitely, doing the needs assessment where you're looking at where you or that client is starting from, what your end goal is, your time horizon. And then that gives you a better sense of what the business and financial vehicles and people that you're going to need to use to be able to hit that goal. Because at the end of the day, it's all math and it has to add up. Right. So as an example, if you may have a person that says, hey, I'm starting from absolutely nothing and I want to be a billionaire next week. And then you look at, based on that time horizon and what rate of return and the rate of return that you'll need, what's going to get you there? And it's like, well, the lottery and crime. They're not sustainable things. So, those are one of the things that we look at is the needs assessment. We also look at the skills assessments of the teams, and we say, what skills do we need and or need to develop, and what things make the most sense for us to do, what things make the most sense for one of our partners to do, what things make the most sense for us to outsource or automate. And then we also may look at the marketing channels that we're using for a particular business or process and saying, what are the most effective channels in media for us to use to hit those goals within our target range of time.
That's great.
Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
And I know people listening right now come from all walks of life. Some are going to be involved in church-based leadership, some in business. Do the same principles apply if somebody let's say they're a pastor that's listening right now? Do the same principles apply? Same thinking?
Absolutely. Again, I think it all comes back to that needs assessment as the foundation. And you may also end up doing, as we do with a lot of clients, is a learning goals checklist where we break down every aspect of their business and they rank the top priorities that they want to focus on. But when you zero in on that needs assessment and you say, this is where we're starting from, you establish that baseline and you come up with your goals, and whether that's to expand your ministry by a certain amount of people within a certain time frame. And you look at, what's going to be necessary for us to do that. Do we need to explore some new media? Do we need to go to live streaming? Do we need to go to television to expand our ministry? Or, do we want to develop some community-based programs? What type of funding would we need? So when you look at, where you're starting from, what your end goal is, the time horizon, then you can start to put in place the right people, processes, and systems to help you hit that goal within your time frame.
Awesome. Brilliant. And still kind of staying on the topic of sort of your journey, how do you now define success at this stage in your journey?
Well, success for me is a lot like I define wealth, and not wealth so much as necessarily how much you have in the bank, but wealth for me and success is the ability to perceive an opportunity, bring structure to that opportunity, and bring it to market. So if I can take a concept and turn it into reality, if I can tap into that spiritual piece that allows you to again create. To me, that's success, just being able to conceive something and bring it into existence so that it creates value and benefit for people.
Awesome. And John Maxwell said that the secret to success can be found in our daily routine. Typically speaking, what does the first 90 minutes of your day look like?
Well, I actually, look at that a little differently because one of the things in working with a lot of clients that we found is that one of the reasons that people struggle is that they think about their businesses and often their lives day to day and month to month instead of, year to year and decade to decade. Mm-hmm. So I definitely start by thinking very, very long term. Mm-hmm. And I also operate heavily out of something that's known as the theory of constraints, where I look at, what is the biggest constraint in my life or in this particular business that if I remove that constraint would lead to a massive leap forward. Mm. And so my days and months and years are really focused on identifying the most important thing that I can do every day that will change the condition of my life or my business. Or the client's business, and then working relentlessly on those things. So a lot of people have heard of the Pareto principle or the 80-20 principle. There's also something else that's called the 450 rule, where you take the 80-20 principle one step further. So really looking at those small things.
Speak to us and give us like to walk us through a morning. Then, what exactly will you do? What is that tool exactly, and how do you use that tool?
Sure. Well, again, starting from, I guess I also have to put it in some additional context, which is about networking. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big believer in the importance of building relationships and networks. Mm-hmm. And So I also create a networking plan. So my year, pretty much I plan year to year. So within a year, I have identified certain relationships that I want to build. I've also set certain goals for the different businesses that I'm involved with. And what I'm going to do is to break those down to specific tasks. But for me as a CEO, I'm primarily focused on building relationships and setting the vision and the strategic direction of the company. And then my next level down is focused on putting in place the processes that are necessary for people to follow in order for us to be able to do the things that we do in the most efficient means possible. So again, most of my day is spent on building those relationships that are a part of my networking plan.
Right.
And that may be learning, it may be having phone calls, but really one of the most important things I've learned over the years is that you really have to get on the road and meet people. You can't do it from behind your desk or from the telephone. Like, you really need to go meet people.
That's great. That's great. And so that tool in the morning then, so you said that just focusing on those important things. So in terms of the 80-20 then, so the 20 for you is building relationships.
Right, and not even necessarily the 20, because, it literally is more the 450. So, again, if you were to take the 80-20 principle and say, okay, give me the small percentage of the 20% that actually accounts for 50% of the impact. So, like the 4% that accounts for 50% of the impact, that's what I'm looking for. And a lot of times that is those are going to be relationships. Right. That if you have this relationship with this particular person, it can leap forward your business or the organization that you're running or working with by 5 years, 10 years. Literally one relationship can do that. So, those are the things that I'm often looking at is if we remove this constraint or we had this relationship, would it catapult the organization forward?
So the relationships, and where would sales come in then? Some might say, well, sales would be that function. Where does sales fit for you? Is that someone else's role?
Sales is at least for me in our process, much further down the line. Okay. So, you definitely are going to have your strategic planning phase where you have the mission, the vision, the values of the organization, and then that rolls into what you would set out as a strategic plan where you have some long-term goals and short-term objectives. And then supporting those long-term goals and short-term objectives, some of which are going to be revenue goals, revenue and profit goals, you're going to next have some marketing functions. So, I kind of hate to use military analogies, but for me, marketing is like softening the landing for some troops. So let's say you want to take over a city or a capital. And if you were to send the troops in without air support, it would be a pretty bloody battle. So that's what happens with sales if you don't have proper marketing and branding going on. When your salespeople go in, they meet a lot of resistance because people aren't familiar with the product. You haven't done the education. You haven't educated people. So we're also big believers on education-based marketing. And if you haven't educated the consumer, your salespeople are more likely to hear no. So what we also do is to focus on the messaging and the branding. And in that messaging and the branding piece, what we're doing is identifying the stories and the emotional features, advantages, and benefits of the products and services that we offer so that we can differentiate ourselves in the marketplace where you often have hundreds, sometimes even thousands of companies selling very similar products and services. So the messaging and the branding and the marketing comes first for us, and it makes it so much easier for you to sell. And quite honestly, you're not even doing a whole lot of selling. The customers are calling you if you do great marketing and branding.
It's great. It's great, man. And what other habits have contributed towards your success?
I would definitely say a focus on continuous improvement, a focus and the ability to learn and master new skills. And these are things that I've picked up through, I would say starting out probably through athletics and basketball and different sports and judo, jiu-jitsu, martial arts over the years, where you start from this concept and you stay at it until you master it, and eventually are able to teach it. these are I think the skills that have really made the difference for me in the long run and allowed me to sustain and grow in a very competitive environment.
It's great. It's great, man. And what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
Well, it was an interesting question. I was thinking about that, and quite honestly, I don't really focus on weaknesses, and for the most part, I don't really, kind of teach and the people around me to focus on the weaknesses. I'm more focused on the strengths, because if I don't do something well, I'm going to outsource it, or I'm going to try to automate it, or hire someone to do it. So I don't really believe in, focusing on things that I'm not good at. There are some things that, again, I'm not good at. I don't have the time to do or the interest to do. And generally in those instances, I am going to outsource that or automate it or hire someone. But yeah, I would say for the most part at this point in my career, I'm pretty strong in those core competencies that are needed to do the work that I do.
Okay. So are you saying there's no weakness?
No, I'm not. Well, I'm saying I don't focus on
without
some
focusing on it, because there's some leaders coming up now and they're thinking they may be thinking that someone as successful as yourself is like Superman. They have no flaws.
That's definitely not the message. The message is focus on your strengths. Your strengths are where your gifts are and where you will achieve the greatest success. So even like within a company. There's some people that want people to be well-rounded and let's kind of spend time to strengthen your weaknesses. Whereas we say, what is your gift? Let's put you in that place where you have your gift. So I'll give you an example. We also have a lot of clients. We do training for probably 30 or 40 direct sales or network marketing type of companies. Mm-hmm. And you have certain people that are not great salespeople. Mm-hmm. So there's no point in teaching a person who's not a great salesperson how to be a great salesperson, because they may be a master trainer, but they can't sell. And then you have another person that could walk down the street and sell everyone that they come in contact with. So it makes sense to put that person in the sales role and have the person who has a natural gift for being a trainer in the trainer role. Mm-hmm. So we try to put people in the roles where they have their gifts, as opposed to trying to fix weaknesses.
So what's your biggest strength?
Again, I think the ability to learn is a big strength. I think vision is also a strength of mine, is being able to see opportunities before they happen and to bring structure to them.
Okay, and if anything at all, at the beginning of your leadership journey, what was holding you back from going into leadership?
I would say mostly experience and the knowledge and experience, and these are things that just take some time to develop. They also take having some good coaches, mentors, and advisors who are guiding you. And there are a lot of people that try to jump right into leadership. So I do think you need to learn how to serve before you can lead. And in my experience, the people who have been the best leaders also served in some capacity as well. And then there's also, of course, servant leadership as a concept. But I do think there's some experiences, and I'll give you a specific example within the financial industry. There's some people, particularly like younger leaders, and they had never seen things like market crashes. So when they were in the midst of a bull market, they thought the market could only go up. But when you have people who do have that wisdom and experience to know what these boom and bust cycles look like, it allows you to make much better decisions. So I think those were the things that kind of held me back early on, was just the time needed to become a leader and to gain that wisdom and experience.
Okay, cool. And if you could name three for us, three significant mentors in your journey so far, who would your top three be?
Well, definitely my father, as I mentioned. He taught me a lot of great things and skills. I would also say one of my uncles who I worked with when I was in college, he was really my first major job. I worked in his law office, and he taught me just how to solve problems. And he would send me out to go do some task for his law office, and failure was not an option. So he's like, whatever you have to do, work it out. But failure was definitely not an option. And he taught me that and how to persevere and to continue to problem solve. And then I would say the third person, probably most recently, would be Dr. George Frazier, who taught me a lot about working with people. He taught me a lot about networking, building relationships. He's just really a master in that area. And we consider him, if that was a martial art, he would have a black belt several times.
Great. Let me dig a bit deeper into those relationships and ask what's the best piece of advice you've gotten from each of those people?
Wow. Okay. Well, actually, let me. I'm gonna switch gears. Instead of answering that question, let me give a couple pieces of advice that I found most helpful over the years. So, I think one thing that if I was going to tell someone about connecting with people is, I've typically found that people fall into a couple of buckets. The first is what I would call a visionary leader. The second is an early adopter. And the third is the follower bucket. So if you're ever trying to do something early on and you're relatively new to the field, go after the visionary leaders first. And the way that you can tell the visionary leaders, if you were to read their bios, these are people who have launched things, they've created things, they've started things. They're going to be more likely to take risks on new ventures than people who have been in the same job for 20 or 30 years. Okay. So the next set of people would be your early adopters. And these are going to be the key influencers, the opinion molders. They usually have networks that they kind of run or influence. So they're also a good group to go after if you're trying to do something early on, because they're always looking for new and exciting things that they can share with their networks. And then you have the followers. The followers should be the last people that you approach, because they're going to be looking for social proof. And they have a wait and see attitude. They want to be the 1,000th person to jump on the bandwagon as opposed to the first. So I would say generally when you're starting out, go after the visionary leaders and the early adopters before you go after the followers. So that's one piece of advice. The second, I would say for people, as I mentioned, is get on the road and build relationships. Your network is not only a reflection of your net worth. If you can't see ideas and you can't figure out that opportunity that you want to take advantage of, or your great idea, your $1 million idea, $1 billion idea, the idea that'll change the world, it's typically because you have a limited network. And if you don't have, because when you have these networks, you have more ideas that are coming at you and you can see how the different pieces fit together. But if all you do is you get up and go to work or go to your job and come home, you're missing out on so much of that. So again, get on the road, attend networking events, create that networking plan. That will change your life and that will change your business.
That's great. Awesome. Love that networking plan. And what's the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
I would say, the nonprofit piece that I'm working on, which is PCOS Challenge. It's a nonprofit or an NGO organization for women with a health condition called polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS. And I've been working with this organization for about 8 years. The executive director, Sasha Adi, she came to me and she said, this is a condition that affects, hundreds of millions of women globally, up to 14 million women in the U.S., and it's completely underserved. And she basically said, if you had a chance to help start the American Cancer Society or the American Diabetes Association, one of these major associations, would you do it? And I said, absolutely, I'm all in and happy to help. Since then, the organization has grown from 0 to over 40,000 members globally. It's now the largest organization globally for women with this health condition, PCOS. And, I've just been, working with them to grow and help as many women with this condition as possible. So, I'm probably, most proud of that out of, any and all of the other work that I've done.
That's great. Wow. And where can we find out more about you? And is there a book you'd recommend, first of all? Is there a book that you'd recommend to a leader or entrepreneur that's listening right now?
Sure. Well, one of my favorite books is Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. A lot of people know Think and Grow Rich. For me, Think and Grow Rich was probably the cliff notes of Law of Success. And when I say Law of Success, not the new watered down, reprint version. You can find one of the original versions.
The volumes.
It's incredible. It was passed down to be from my father. It was leather bound with the gold leaf and the tassel. I mean, like that's. But it's an incredible book that has changed my life and really so many others. So definitely Law of Success, the original version if you can find it.
Awesome. And how do you find out more about you? Like, how do you find out more about? Do you have a website? Do you have on social media?
Sure. People can visit us online at baronseries.com, and I'll spell that for people. It's BARON series SERIES.com. They can also catch me online at facebook.com/business coach or twitter.com/wealth building.
Awesome. Hey, listen, thank you so much for your time today. Guys, go and check out The Baron's Son. I recommend that to you, The Baron's Son. If you're thinking about how do I get started even? How do I move forward from here? Go read The Baron's Son. Go and check out William's material. And William, thank you for your time today, sir. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you, man. Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around the leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes. Give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.